Today's session is the basics that I wish every single Prairie State student knew that wants to go in for a bachelor's degree. And it goes way beyond the basics. I'm gonna totally fill up this hour, I expect, and maybe go a little past. I will keep to the hour though. So let's just dive right into things. Just a quick heads up that an overview of what we're going to be focusing on, and what I do want to give you guys a heads up of other events, fairs, things coming up to benefit you that are happening this semester. I have a lot of best practices, things for you to be aware of, how the system works and what to be looking for as you go on for your bachelor's degree and during your entire time here at Prairie State. There are lots of special university programs that Prairie State is part of, and also some programs that any Illinois community college student can benefit from. So I'm going to be talking about those, including some free tuition programs that some universities have if you have an income and GPA level that matches. And then a quick overview of scholarships. I have a whole dedicated session on scholarships, but I know paying for school is a big question, so I always put that in to most of my other presentations as well. All right, so first, other upcoming information sessions. So it's both fairs and kind of sessions like what we're doing right now, the other events. Fairs, the next 3 events are all fairs. So on the 13th, the 12 public Illinois universities are going to be in a Zoom-based fair. You can get on these links, talk live to an admissions representative at a university. It is great. You should definitely be talking to them if you want to be starting at the university next fall. If you have 2 years or more before you plan to transfer, more if you're a part-time student. It's still good to be making connections. Let them pitch and tell you how their majors are going to support the careers you want to go into, or what kind of scholarship programs or other internship programs, things like that that you might like. So that's true for all of the fairs. We also have a Latinx transfer resource fair on the 20th in a couple weeks, and an HBCU, Historically Black College or University transfer fair, coming up the very next day, the 21st. And then for these sessions that I give for our students, we've got on November 16th, if over 600 universities use one of these application systems for transfer students. So if you're applying to a school that uses it, it's a great session to go to. So Common App, Common Black College app, Coalition app, and then some schools also use CSS Profile for something beyond FAFSA. And then Career Services, we've got a session on November 30th to support you guys. All right, so now into the heart of our session. So first thing to do as a student is make sure that your major is a fit for your career and educational goals. So figuring out what major your bachelor's degree is going to be in. So that's true for everyone, even if you're going on to grad school. If for say you're pre-medicine or pre-dental, that is wonderful. Always declare that, but also decide what you're going to be getting your bachelor's in, what major that's going to be. But it could be any major. I'm not just the people going on for grad school. So figure out the name of where you're heading. What's that degree going to be called? Meet with your advisor in the advising center between registration times. I hope that that's not the only time you're talking to your advisor. It is great to check in with them when you're not choosing your schedule, so you can have a bigger conversation and have a chat about your major and your career goals. The advisors are a great sounding board to make sure that your major and career goals are a fit. If it's not a fit, they usually refer you on to talk to me or to Career Services. Our Career Services office is awesome. They provide free resources and can go into depth about careers. How many jobs are out there? What kind of salaries do they make? What kind of work environment do they work in? So they're a great place to make sure that your major fits your career goals and that your career fits your life, your overall goals. So as you're confirming your major, the big reason that I want to make sure you're doing that is your major is one of the biggest things that determines what classes you should be prioritizing during your entire 2 years at Prairie State. Some majors, that's more important than others. I kind of go into a little more detail of that later. But I always want you to be thinking, what are you getting your bachelor's degree in? Because that does change what classes are priorities for you. And also a good note, meeting with your professors. If you have professors teaching topics that are related to the major that you're thinking of going into, it's awesome to go to their office hours and let them know you're interested in the field or a related field, and have that conversation with them. It's another area. So your advisor, career services, your professors, and me, all places to be talking to make sure your goals are going to be a fit. And one thing I just is a really important note for every major, please make it a priority to complete your math requirement for your major before you transfer and really as soon as possible. If you have that done before you're applying to universities, it can prioritize you. It can make you much more competitive than someone who hasn't started their math or is still working on their math requirements. So quick notes there. Um, a common thing that I talk to students about or students come my way is you might be feeling stuck. You're not even sure what major you might be wanting to do. And part of that is going to be some soul searching, but definitely engaging in those conversations with lots of the people I said in the last slide. But here is one method you can take while you are figuring out your major, which is figure out the category. There's similar majors. We call them meta majors now. And if you Google those terms, you're going to see all kinds of things now. Common meta majors, these related majors, would be, as an example, for business. If someone's going into a business-related major, a major that's usually in a college of business at a university, and the names of those majors are usually accounting, business administration, or business management, finance, marketing, management information systems, things like that. If you're in one of these majors but you don't know you want to major in something with one of these, but you don't know which one yet, that's okay. Your entire 2 years at Prairie State, you'd be taking the common freshman and sophomore requirements that universities require their students to take as well before they go into one of those more specific majors. So anyone that is considering some of these majors and still figuring it out, then they want to take our 2 accountings, financial and managerial accounting, our 2 econs, macro and micro econ. They want to take business statistics, and they want to be ready to take either business calculus or finite math, depending on the university they're heading on to. So that's an example of why we want to figure out what meta major, what category you're in. Another common category is education. If you know you want to teach, usually people know that and they know what grade they want to teach. So they can go straight to, they don't have to identify the meta major or the category, but straight to saying, I want to teach elementary, I want to teach grades 1 through 6, elementary, or secondary, I want to teach high school. Quick note, if you do want to teach high school, that generally your major is actually the topic that you're going to be teaching. And secondary education is more like a minor. Some universities actually even officially call it a minor when you're doing secondary ed. Another common category, so you might think you want to work with people as a health professional, but you don't know in what way. If you're between things like nursing, pre-dental, going on to medical school, occupational therapy, becoming a pharmacist, physical therapy, these are some of the more common examples that we have. You actually do very similar coursework. So if you know that you're somewhere in that category, while you're still deciding the more specific major you want to be, you can be identifying that with your advisor. So you're taking very specialized and focused strategic classes to be preparing you. Some people aren't into those professions that I have listed above, and they're more into things we call the humanities or liberal arts. And that's if you want to go into communications like media or mass comm kind of fields, English, that'd be like literature or writing, humanities, philosophy majors. Those are kind of my more low stress majors. Those are majors that usually are very supportive of you doing a lot of exploration, not having to have specific prereqs during your first 2 years. Definitely getting your gen eds done, exploring fields you might like, but we usually don't have to worry about prereqs as much, but never assume, always be checking. I'll be having some more slides about how you check things to make sure what to be prioritizing for your goals. Another meta major is social sciences. So if you're interested in kind of how humans interact as groups, socially or behaviorally, and these are majors that tend to fall into the social sciences and they tend to have more common requirements. So criminal justice, econ, history, political science, psychology, social work, and sociology. As an example, if anyone's heading for any of these social sciences, I would always recommend that they prioritize taking a statistics class. It's usually a very common requirement. And it's actually common in these majors, in addition to a statistics class you may take for math, you often, for example, in psychology, you often take a junior or senior level class that is statistics and research, or more statistics, because they really value that you have deep knowledge in that area. Oh, one quick note, social work is pretty specific. If anyone's considering social work, you want to be looking at more specific lists almost as soon as you're able to. And then STEM fields. So common STEM fields would include biology, chemistry, computer science, engineering, math, and physics. For pretty much all of these majors, if you're still deciding between all these majors and you want to keep your options open, you want to prioritize getting to Calculus 1, Math 171 right away. That tends to make every school, every major happy. There are some schools that you might not have to get that high of a level math and still be that major. But if you're not sure what your major is or where you're heading to next, then following the most common requirements is a way that you just keep moving forward while you're deciding. For both biology and chemistry, they have very similar prereqs, almost identical in what they're doing at Prairie State. You do all your gen eds, you do Calculus 1, that Math 171, you do the 1 year of our general biologies, which is biology 111 and 112, and you do 1 year of general chemistry, Chem 110 and 130. Chemistry does the same thing, but then they typically want you might only take one bio, but then you go on to take more, or you go on to take more chemistry, the organic chemistry. So these are the things but in that first year, you can be taking the same things in a lot of these things while you're deciding if you are. Okay, so the next thing is, so after you've figured out what your major is, your next step, you want to be thinking about where you're going on for your bachelor's degree after Prairie State. My recommendation to students is to be looking at least 3 other schools in depth to see about the major, the way that they teach, the cost, how long it will take you to complete, to see if this school, the student life, the opportunities, the ways that they prepare you for your careers, to make sure that that's a fit for what you want out of your education. So I say the top 3 or more. You do not need to limit yourself to 3, but I do recommend at least 3 so that you have options, that what school you prioritize, the one you feel the most comfortable with. Sometimes the first school a student looks into is the school they go to and they're happy with, but sometimes they end up liking another school better, or the other school is a better educational or cost fit when they explore more. So figuring out where you want to go to next is after your major is your next thing you want to do. As you're looking into the major, into the universities to see where you're going to be heading to next, you want to get on the university's websites, and they have wonderful transfer resources. I'm going to talk a little more about, drill down into that in the next slide. So overall, you want to use their transfer resources on their webpage. You want to be in contact with their admissions officers. They are used to talking to students, even if it's 2 years before you plan to transfer. And definitely they want to be talking to you if you are going to be going with them, transferring over to them within the next year. They are a great resource in addition to our wonderful advisors and things that we talk about, you and I. They're a wonderful resource, the university admissions offices, to make sure you're on track with your transfer plans, that the courses, everything's in line, and that you're not going to have any surprises. By contacting and speaking with them early in the system, that's how you avoid those last minute surprises. Just a heads up, I do recommend students keep an open mind and look into both public and private universities if you have any interest in that. A common thing I hear from students is they're focusing only on public universities to keep the cost down. That can often be true, that it's going to cost less to go to a public university, but it is not always true. If you are a student that has a high GPA of a 3.5 GPA or higher, and you've joined the Phi Theta Kappa Honors Society while you're at Prairie State, you might end up at some schools, you might end up being eligible for enough scholarships that a cost of attending a private school could end up costing the same amount, or maybe even a little less than a public school. So I just want to throw that out there in case that is something you weren't aware of and might want to consider. I do want to give you a quick note, though, that there's different kinds of private schools. I do not recommend transferring to for-profit colleges. They are also called proprietary colleges. They're designed to make money off of your education for their stockholders. So an example of for-profit colleges would be like Everest or Westwood or ITT. There's private nonprofit colleges, which are totally fine. That's like Loyola or Roosevelt or DePaul, Northwestern, schools like that. But for-profit colleges, there have been some problems historically in the US in the recent past, and sometimes it's not always a good experience. Okay, so moving on, let's talk about some resources. If you are still deciding or you want to look into more schools to consider going on to for your bachelor's degree, College Navigator is a great resource. It is, let me change the way I'm sharing this because it did not switch tabs. Excellent. All right, so College Navigator is a free search engine that the federal government, that our tax dollars pay for. So that's one thing. Another thing I like to warn people about is your education. Some people are trying to make money off of you, and that can even come from search engines or Googling when you're trying to find the next school. For-profit schools spend a ton of money on internet ads. Nonprofit and public schools do as well, but usually like your Google feed gets filled up with the for-profit schools, the schools that there's some serious concerns about their practices. And actually for-profit schools, there is data that their graduates tend to make less and have higher student loans when they graduate. So College Navigator is, no one's making money off your education. It's just information the government publishes so we can benefit from it. The way most people like to use this is the location and the major. So you could choose on the left-hand side under states, you could scroll and pick a specific state. You could choose the map if you wanted to pick multiple states, just literally kind of penning them in. You could zip code search if you wanted to do nearby or near Atlanta or Dallas, Texas, or whatever part of the country. You could look up a local zip code that you want to move to and look from there. I'm going to put in Prairie State zip code as an example and do a 50-mile search because downtown Chicago can end up being more than 25 miles away sometimes. Programs is where you would pick your major. I'm just going to do business as an example. And you could add a whole category. At the top, it's showing a whole category, or you can add a more specific categories. So that's something that you can explore. I'll just add a whole category of business majors and close that out. On the left-hand side, it's showing me that one item is selected, so it's remembering that, and then level of award. So when I'm talking to students, we're almost always looking for a bachelor's because it's for what's next after Prairie State. Just a heads up, if you are planning to go to grad school, so get a master's or a doctorate, the advanced, you can be using this website later to be looking under the advanced category. And then institution type, I do recommend that you stick with only public and private nonprofit. And then I'm just going to go ahead and run this. And now we see over on the right-hand side, kind of towards the top, that there are 32 colleges or universities that have some sort of a business-related degree within 50 miles of Prairie State. Since we did a zip code search, you can actually see how many miles away. So no surprise, Governor State is the closest. They're 4 miles away. And then you can just kind of scroll down and it goes closest to farthest. So you can kind of prioritize nearby a zip code if you like searching that way, but you don't have to. If I did not search by zip code and instead searched by state, it does an alphabetical search because it doesn't have any specific place to be focusing on. So doing the whole state of Illinois, there are 54 colleges or universities with a bachelor's in some form of a business-related major, and it's alphabetically listed when you look that way. I just want to give you guys, while we're in here, a quick heads up using Governor State as an example. You can get a quick overview of the school, phone number, click to their website, see their size. So they have 3,000 undergrad students, a total of 4,600 students. There's a ton of information down here. I don't generally encourage you to worry about too much about all the detail here, but if you are really interested in something, definitely you can check it out. At this point, it's a good place to just jump to a school's webpage and start researching them right on their webpage. But the exception I wanted to show you is this net price. The net price is a standardized information that the government's been requiring of universities for years. And it's showing, for example, a student going to Governor's State after grants and scholarships, the cost they were paying after grants and scholarships were applied was $9,000, almost $10,000. But that amount can vary depending on your family's income level, or if you're over 25, your income level, where someone whose family's income is 30,000 and below, the average cost that they're paying is $8,600 versus someone whose family's income is over $110,000, they're on average pay $18,000, almost $19,000 a year. All right. I'm going to jump back to the presentation. And if someone, I'm getting some sound, if someone can mute, that'd be awesome. Thank you. Oh, no problem. Thanks for joining us. All right, so the next thing I want to give you a heads up with is our Midwest Student Exchange Program. Neighboring states have this webpage and they publish discounted tuition for Illinois residents. So it knows, it already pre-fills that I'm from Illinois. We're looking at a bachelor's degree, and public is generally where you see the biggest discount. So this website gives you a chance to quickly research how much you'd pay if you go to specific schools in specific states as an Illinois resident. For example, Indiana University Northwest is about a 25-minute drive away from most students in Prairie States District. If we go over here to this blue box that says View Details, is where you can get the information. And it shows us your estimated MSEP tuition is $11,400 for a full year to be fully enrolled. So sometimes people are surprised. It used to be if you went out of state, you were paying a lot more money. And that is not necessarily the case anymore at public universities. Not everyone discounts, but the ones that do, a lot of them advertise right here on this website. And so you can quickly research it. Another thing that I really like, gives you a contact. So Antoine Hawkins is the admissions counselor at IUN at Indiana University Northwest that you would call or email if you wanted to learn more about this and get confirmation. Antoine is actually a Prairie State alumni, so if you do happen to contact him, tell him Sarah Hines says hi. He loves when I refer students. All right, so that's another resource for you. So next, steps to take to make sure that all your efforts are going in the right direction. You're taking the right classes, heading for a major that fits your career goals you want to. Kind of that next step is on the university's transfer admissions webpage. So pretty much every university in their admissions webpage you can choose for transfer students. You want to look for things like our equivalencies, articulation, transfer guides, or transfer credits. That's where you can find more detail of classes that are already documented at Prairie State to be matches to their classes, or general guidance for transfer students. A quick heads up that most public universities and most large private universities, so like DePaul or Loyola would be examples, most of them publish the list of the courses they have already matched to our classes. Small private colleges, so like Olivet Nazarene, are less likely to publish this list, although Olivet does publish it as well. If you find a school, public, private, small or large, that you can't find a list that's published, that's okay. Just contact the admissions office at the university with questions, see if they do publish it. And if not, they can be a resource for helping you with that, and I can be too. The next step that you want to do if the detail is not already showing up on the transfer admissions webpage, is checking out the university's catalog or their bulletin. So this is a webpage. So these used to be documents, books, basically 100-page, 400-page books that had all the school's rules, and for each major, the specific lists of classes that were required, the curriculum to get that degree. So it's the master list. And that's something, if the transfer admissions webpage is not already showing you priority classes to take for the major at that university, then going to the catalog or the bulletin is your next step of what you want to do. You want to pull up, say you're going to be a psychology major at UIC, and you would look at their catalog and the list of the requirements and then look at the matches. Now, UIC actually does publish Prairie State info, uses a great resource. I'm going to show you a little bit. They use a transferology resource that does some of that translation of what's required for their psych major for what you would be taking at Prairie State. But any of this research that you're pulling together, be sure to share with your advisor anytime you meet so that they can keep guiding you towards the more specific classes that will make the school you're going to next happiest. And then if you ever get stuck on any of this, definitely reach out to me too. Okay, additional things to be thinking about when you're researching universities and corresponding with them. So there's certain policies that's always good to keep a lookout for. Sometimes they can be hard to find, and so don't be shy. Pick up a phone or email their admissions office and let that human help you. That's why they have jobs, to help you with any questions you have about becoming a student with them. So every university is going to have a limit on the number of credits they can transfer in from another school and apply to your degree. They do have different ways of listing it. Sometimes the schools say, we don't have any limit, but you have to take your last 30 credits with us. So if a degree is 120 credits, you have to take 30 with them. Then in reality, they'll apply 90 credits. Now that's an uncommon answer. The more common answer, so almost every university is going to transfer in at least 60 credits from community colleges, but never assume and always check. I threw in a few examples of more common schools that show up, or a couple schools that kind of have more generous limits. So GSU will take up to 75 credits from Prairie State, and ISU, Illinois State, will take up to 70. Olivet Nazarene is uncommon. It takes a higher amount than even GSU 75 is pretty high. Olivet Nazarene goes even higher. They'll take up to 82 credits from Prairie State. And if you're in a major where you can finish everything up in 3 semesters, then you'd only be taking about 40 credits to finish out, 38. Southern at Carbondale will take up to 78 credits from Prairie State. Now UIC, they do theirs a little bit differently. They require that your last 60 credits are at UIC. So the number of credits they can transfer in and apply to your degree varies depending on how many credits the bachelor's degree is. Most bachelor's degrees at UIC are either 120 to 128 credits. So they will transfer in 60 to 68 credits, depending on your major, so that you're still taking your last 60 credits of them. I'm just giving you kind of a heads up of things that to be looking out for so you can strategize classes. And sometimes, for like GSU as an example, since it's so close by, sometimes students research it, decide to take another semester after they've finished their associates, and then head to GSU afterwards because of that wonderful 75 credit policy. If you use financial aid, though, always be in touch with them about it as well, because there are more specific rules if you take classes. Actually, anytime you might be taking classes beyond the associate's degree, always be sure to be talking to financial aid and to be in very direct contact with the admissions office at the university you're getting your bachelor's at, to be sure you're not going over their limit on accident, or make sure you're not going into a major that has more specific rules that you need to be transferring, making sure that you're timing the transfer right. Course sequencing. So this is kind of going into that. There are some majors that you might need to be there in the fall to take their fall junior and spring junior classes, and then to be on track to take the senior year classes. So sequencing is, once you transfer to a school, let's say you have all the prereqs in your transfer for a specific major, how long will it take you to graduate? Some majors are particular about that. That tends to be education, and business majors and social work tend to be more particular. There's some majors that don't tend to be particular at all. Of course, sequencing, it's not an issue at all. And that tends to be your liberal arts or social sciences, like history or psychology or sociology. So sometimes this will make an important thing. The sciences, the sequence of when the classes, the prereqs of how the classes build on each other and when semester the classes are offered. Sometimes that can be really important in like STEM or engineering, computer science majors. Sometimes students need to leave Prairie State earlier than they want to so that they stay on track for their major. And I just want to give you a heads up. You could always be looking into dual enrollment if you want to continue saving, paying the affordable rate with us while you are getting started at a university. That is something that can be open to students with financial aid also, but you do need to have a conversation with our financial aid office and do specialized paperwork on it. Heads up. Everything I just talked about in the last several slides are all fabulous things and a great reason to go to the transfer fair. So I have 3 coming up, 1 next week and then 2 the week after. And these are live sessions where you could be chatting with admissions officers, and you don't have to know everything. You could just be just kind of start a conversation. You could say, I'm looking at transferring to your school next fall and being a criminal justice major. I'll be finished with my associate's degree or not before I transfer, and kind of let that conversation start from there. All right, next thing I want to give you a heads up on is I have so many more resources on our webpage that I put there, hoping it's easy for you guys to find. So these links, and just a quick heads up, I'm going to pause. I think I had to let 1 person into this meeting if there was like a pause to be admitted. I don't get your email in the report later, and I'd love to send you this presentation. So if you had to be admitted into this meeting, send me an email. My email is going to be at the end, and I'll make sure you get this presentation. Everything purple on here is a link. So the transfer student web pages are a series of pages that I have designed for you guys to help make your lives easier and going on. Over here on the right-hand side, if you're on a desktop or a laptop, it's on the right-hand side. If you're using a phone, it'll be at the bottom. You just kind of scroll to the bottom. Over here are the various pages with the information. So university visits, and so I've got the fairs I mentioned. University visits, we actually have universities that arrange dedicated time where you could be dropping into a virtual meeting and talking to them, and that's where you get that information. Events is, I talked about these at the beginning. I've got a couple more sessions coming up. This is where you can see all of that, including what we're doing right now. I'm going to talk over special university programs with you in a moment. And this is where you could get it on our webpage as well. I'm going to jump down though today, transferring credits to a college or university. I do want to take some time and show you guys this part because this benefits almost every student. Dozens and dozens, like pretty much most likely hundreds of universities throughout the US publish right on their website courses they've documented from other schools that are transferable to their schools. It's not possible for me to list every school throughout the US that publishes it, but when I do find one, I get it linked. There's the majority of schools in Illinois are already linked here. You're going to see a lot of schools use a service called Transferology. And that is a fabulous service that UIC uses as well. I was just looking, I made a note. I was going to show you guys U of I Urbana. They use information. They put very detailed and lovely information out there. I wanted to use that as an example to show you really quick. So U of I Urbana, and just so you know, this webpage is alphabetically listed. So you can scroll down, word search, whatever you want to do. Their handbook, anyone looking at U of I Urbana definitely wants to be looking at every link there. The handbook is something where, depending on what major, what college the major you're heading on to next is in, you open that up and find more specific things to be paying attention to. So in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, I was going to show the English major, but I picked a really bad major to word search for because English is mentioned just about everywhere. I'll just go with astronomy here. It's showing you that you have to have a 2.75 or higher to be considered. Linking where you need to get important web pages you want to link and read more on. So they're kind of putting it all right there into one page by major of what to prioritize. If you were going to heading to an astronomy major at U of I Urbana, you want to prioritize getting Calc 1 and Calc 2 done. If you're going to be transferring in as a sophomore, they also highly recommend, Calc 3, it looks like they have a typo perhaps. Nope, Calc 2. So sophomore level transfer, someone transferring with 30 to 59 credits completed typically. Junior level is if you have 60 or more credits. And if you're going to be transferring there with 60 or more credits, you need those 2 calcs plus also the first physics. And they highly recommend you actually go beyond that into Calc 3 and the second physics as well. And they highly recommend even a few more things. U of I Urbana does their transfer guides. They kind of have a unique system they use. So this is examples of when you get into university transfer admission pages. So even if it's not linked on my page, you can just get to the school's transfer admission pages and look for what they have developed. Every school does this a little differently. These links that I have in that web page is to make things easier for more common schools or things I've found so far. So U of I Urbana, they have the transfer guide can give you a quick overview, but you still want to use the handbook also for all the detail. But I'm putting in, let's say I want to start astronomy as a junior. I plan to start in the summer or the fall, and I'm be transferring from Prairie State. The view requirements, it tells me when I would want to be applying, and that's going to be true for all the majors to start the next fall. Info that you're going to be required to provide. The last one, English proficiency, is if someone was educated in a country that English is not a prominent language. Required GPA, high school transcripts, etc. They even link the transfer handbook, but then they go in here to show you that they have documented Prairie State's Calc Math 150, 171 to be a direct match to calculus they require, the Math 220. And that our Calc 2, Math 172, is on file to be a direct match for the classes they're requiring. So this is examples of things to be looking for. All right, going back to the series of web pages that I have for you guys. All right, over this last one over on the right-hand side, transfer guides and articulation agreements. We have a lot of wonderful nearby universities and a couple national universities that use services where you can see even more specifically, like it kind of has already done the work. If you're coming from Prairie State and going to a specific major, some of them have already laid out the details for you, so you don't have to go through the other steps I was laying out. So if you're heading to accounting, for example, Governor State, Northeastern Illinois University, Southern and Carbondale, Trinity Christian, University of St. Francis, and Western Illinois University all have guides. You can click on that and we can see the more specific list of Prairie State classes for you to be prioritizing while you are getting your associate's degree. So using Western as an example, I'm just following the steps. It said to type in Prairie State, and I did. It opens up a 3-page document. First page is an overview for everybody. For like gen eds, kind of every major wants to be looking at that. And then Western put in more specific notes by major in here. So if you're heading on for, say, broadcast journalism from Prairie State to Western, you want to prioritize taking Com 101, Com 105, 111, or 115, and our journalism class. Business, so if you're heading into, and they make a note, accounting is one of those. These are the specific course codes and Prairie State courses that you want to be prioritizing. So just a few examples. Not all schools do these guides by major, but if you have a certain school or a certain major in mind, get on that website and search it first before you do any other searching, because the work might have already been done for you to benefit from. All right. All right, some more just kind of general information that's helpful to you guys. Prairie State College is regionally accredited, which means you can transfer anywhere through the US. We talk about Illinois a lot. It's very simple to transfer in Illinois because extra efforts have been made to make it extra smooth, but it can be a smooth process to transfer anywhere through the US. Regionally accredited is the form of accreditation that has been around for hundreds of years. It's the type of accreditation that Harvard has, that DePaul has, that UIC has, and Prairie State has. So it's the standard. It's what you want to look for when you're going to your next school. IAI, the Illinois Articulation Initiative, is a system that over 100 colleges, community colleges, and universities in Illinois, both public and private universities, are part of, and it's working behind the scenes. It's helping you even if you don't know it exists. It's a reason why we really focus on getting your gen eds done, is that this is part of the IAI system where if you go on to another school that's part of it in Illinois, they tend to be more generous in waiving requirements if you didn't take a very specific class. Um, Good rule of thumb though, if you earn an AA degree before you transfer on or an AS degree, most universities are going to waive things that aren't specifically required for the major. They'll still require anything specific to the major, even if it was normally a gen ed, like if a specific math is required, other things for the major. And then they still typically require things that are considered graduation requirements. So if you go to a religiously based school, they tend to require religious or philosophy based courses, things that are part of their mission. So I talked ahead of myself a little. The IAI benefit, if you complete that AA degree, it actually is going to get your gen eds waived at any other IAI participating university. All 12 public Illinois universities are part of it, and most of the private universities in the state are part of it. And then you still need your major requirements. So transferology is the other website I just want to show you guys really quick because lots of schools use it. It is free for you and me to use. It costs universities if they want to use it, though. So not all universities do use it. It is used by all 12 public Illinois universities, by I believe 14 private Illinois universities, and it's used by universities in at least 18 states. So it's not everybody, but it's quite a few schools. So it's a good thing for people to know about. If you create an account in Transferology, it defaults to this tab, Will My Courses Transfer? You put in your info, you check for batching schools, you can favorite schools to jump to their information in the future. And then some schools like UIC use the program function. So to put in your classes, you're just literally putting your Prairie State, semester you took a class, and what the class was. So like gen ed stats, if you're going into a social science, that's usually a class to prioritize if you're not sure, if you're not looking at the more specific requirements at a school. I already have it remembers the classes from what I put in before. You can search for matches over here on the right-hand side. It says search for matches or hit the tab for percent matches. And it's showing me over 108 schools are part of this system and have data loaded into the system about how those Prairie State classes that I put in that I took are already on file. So I'm going to just use UIC as an example. I like to type a unique part of the name to just jump to it. You can scroll whatever you prefer. Here's a tricky part or a less common thing. Normally you want to click on a school's name when we're on websites, but in Transferology, it's actually the blue or green areas, these kind of teal areas, the 100% match, the match percent. So when you get into the matches, so any school that uses Transferology uses this matches function, where you see first the course code of the course you took at Prairie State, and you see across from it, every single one of these actually have a specific UIC class that they're matched to exactly. Sometimes they have a note listed that they're matched to a liberal arts category, like a gen ed category. So it's taking care of that category, but they didn't have a class with that exact same topic. And then sometimes they have some odd notations that are identifying that they're electives or kind of that. If you've used transferology and you're not sure how to interpret the information, that is a great reason to come have a meeting. Let's talk and we can look at it together. UIC, since it uses the programs function, which is less common, over here on the right-hand side, you see a box that says apply courses to a program. That's how you get into it. If a school uses it, that will show up. If they don't use it, it doesn't show up. You can use the search box to pull up certain majors or scroll to them. So say you're going to art history at UIC, you choose how my courses might apply to this program. It asks you first if you want to view how courses from another school might apply to this program. If you're going to be taking any more classes at Prairie State or any other school before you start at UIC, you should say yes to that. And then you should put in whichever school you are heading to that you want to see the course matches. So if you're going to this is a wonderful tool to sign up your very first semester at Prairie State, put in your classes and use it to actually choose future classes. I'm going to cancel out of this. I'm going to cancel out of this and just show you a program that's already run because it takes a couple minutes. It's pretty fast, but that feels slow when we're online. So I'm going into my programs and they always are here unless you delete them. And if you click on a hyperlink, it's actually showing you over here the same kind of report that a UIC student sees. These red areas here is showing me a category that's not completed yet. This green English 101 in brackets is the Prairie State class. So when I ran this report, I had put down that I had taken English 102, but I didn't take English 101. So it's telling me, hey, I don't know how you did that. You still need English 101. So it's showing me that these classes match their English 160 and 161, but also that if I take both of them, I will be completing the university writing requirement. Here's where it's giving me a heads up of what maths to be prioritizing. I put in this is a report for a business major, so it's finite or calculus they're listing. Econs, it's telling me I need to take both econs because it's saying 2 are required and listing the 2. And you just kind of scroll in. If I have a class, so if there's a category that's not taken care of yet and you have it, sometimes you see a big list and you might only have to choose one course like this does, but you have lots to choose from. If you've already taken class in a specific category, it will fill the class in and you don't see the full list anymore. So if you're heading to UIC, definitely create a transferology account and definitely come talk to me if you have questions about what you're seeing there, or also talk to UIC. All right. All right, so special university programs, I'm going to kind of make a switch and we have some really kind of unique things I want to make sure everyone's aware of. Governor State, we have a dual degree program with them. If you sign up for this before you've completed more than 45 credits, that last bullet point, you have at least a 2.0 GPA and you take at least 12 credits every fall and spring. And you just meet with their transfer specialist once a semester to make sure that they know what classes you're taking, what major you're heading on to, and they let you know you're perfectly set up and ready for transfer when you finish your degree. They will give you benefits. They will lock in your future GSU tuition early. And if you meet additional qualifications, you may be able to compete for full tuition scholarships. So the early lock-in of tuition, everyone gets. Not everyone gets the scholarships. So tuition, if you join now, you're locking in this rate. If you're a freshman, you've got 2 falls before you start there, and they usually raise the tuition each fall. So they'll be raising the tuition twice between now and then. In the past, the average amount was saved was $2,000 of paying lower tuition by being part of this, okay? For full tuition, we've had 71 Prairie State students in the last 10 years get full tuition scholarships through this program. They are not automatic. If you're in DDP and you get Pell Grant and you have a 275 GPA, you may be eligible for the Promise Scholarship. If you apply for that and receive it, it is full tuition and books. If you're a DACA student and a student who is undocumented, unfortunately, it's only books. However, the honor scholarship is full tuition, whether or not you have documented citizenship status. And you need to be in DDP, get a 3.5 GPA or higher, join our Phi Theta Kappa Honor Society, or take at least 3 classes in our honors program. And if you get that, it is full tuition for your last 2 years at GSU. All right. Another special university program is St. Xavier's Dual Degree Partnership. They set it up a lot like GSU's, get early advising from them, extra scholarships, and a chance to compete for a full tuition scholarship. They don't lock in tuition for their own students, so instead, everyone that joins DDP and later transfers to St. Xavier gets an extra $1,000 scholarship a year. And it's stackable, meaning that gets added to, stacked on to any other scholarships you're eligible for. Students in St. Xavier's DDP can compete for a full tuition scholarship. You need to have a 2.75 GPA or higher, be in DDP, and have joined it while you before you've completed more than 45 credits, or really just signing up more than at least a year before you want to be there. So if you're planning on graduating in spring or summer and are going to be at the university next fall, if you have any chance you might go to St. Xavier or GSU, it is in your best interest to look into signing up for these free programs. They cost you nothing to join. They do not obligate you to transfer to these schools. You can still look at other schools as well. It costs you nothing to quit if you decide you want to go somewhere else. It's all win and no loss. All right, another program we're in is National Lewis. They have some different benefits and a little less restrictions. They also do early advising. If you join this program, you get a scholarship worth 25% off of the tuition. Everyone gets that. And to be eligible, you just need to have at least a 2.0 GPA and at least 9 college credits completed. And you just need to transfer to National Lewis within a year of graduating from Prairie State, and graduate within 3 years at National Lewis for the full scholarship benefit. Last one of our special university programs I'm going to be talking about is UIC's TAG, Transfer Admission Guarantee. To be eligible for this, you need a 3.5 or higher GPA. You could be full-time or part-time, and you need to complete priority classes for your major. The TAG program, the website I have linked here, has their course codes that are priorities to complete, and then you use Transferology to match those to the Prairie State classes. And if you keep your 3.0 and you take the matching coursework at Prairie State, they're guaranteeing a spot for you. You do get early advising from someone at UIC if you join this program throughout your entire time at Prairie State. There is no scholarship or tuition benefit, though, so there's no money, but there is the guaranteed admissions. And a quick heads up that all of this is on the Special Universities Programs webpage, as well as links to their web pages where you can sign up for these programs. They're usually web forms right on their web pages. Oh, one quick note. We are also part of 2 programs for students who are going on to a doctorate of pharmacy. That is pretty much the only graduate program that you don't have to get a bachelor's to continue on to. You can actually take all the prereqs to get into a doctorate of pharmacy program at Prairie State. So that was a little less common. If that's a goal that you have going on, be sure to follow up with me. We can talk about it more. All right, a few more other programs. I'm gonna run out of time. I can't go into the detail I'd like, but a lot of public Illinois universities and a couple privates have guaranteed admissions and early advising programs for community college students. Some include small scholarships that you can compete for. They're not always automatic. Not all of them include scholarships. I highlighted the ones that give you the greatest benefits, the ones we just talked about. But these are all, so everything that's purple is a link. I will send you guys a presentation and you can click on these links to learn more about the various things. A couple of these are duplicates just so you can see a full picture of what's going on there. Okay, quick heads up that for some students, they might qualify for free tuition programs. Just a quick heads up about free tuition programs though. It's still usually most affordable to take as many classes as you can from Prairie State, and usually actually graduating from Prairie State before you transfer. Free tuition programs usually have things set where people will be eligible for MAP and Pell Grants, and the universities use your MAP and Pell Grants to pay for the tuition. And then they waive the rest of the cost, or they might call it a university grant or a university scholarship. But then students will have to find out scholarships or pay on their own for all the other costs of attending. So that's housing, room and board, books, transportation, anything else. And here's why it's more affordable. So as a quick reminder, if you're taking 30 credits a year being full-time at Prairie State, it costs 52.20 for tuition and fees. The 1 year of room and board at universities is typically $10,000 to $11,000 a year. So if you're getting free tuition through these programs, that is awesome, but you still could be paying around 10 grand or so, if you're living on campus, if you're not commuting. Here are some examples. So that's just a quick heads up. There's still a great opportunity. Eureka College has uniquely Eureka Promise. If your family's expected family income contribution on your FAFSA is under 1,000, you have an associate's degree and a 2.8 GPA or higher, you may qualify for free tuition to transfer and go to Eureka. Lake Forest College has a Forester flagship that has very similar requirements, GPA and income requirements. I think they write it a little differently. The next one's instead of your family's contribution in a FAFSA, they usually have a family income level of around 63 to 67,000 a year. If you're under 24 and your family's income is 63 or 67,000 or below, you may qualify for one of these free tuition programs. So Forester Flagship, and then also they have a separate program for students if you're undocumented or DACA. It's not full tuition, but it's close. It's up to $40,000 a year, and last year's tuition was $49,000 at Lake Forest. University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign Commitment is their full tuition program, and that's if you're $67,000 or less. The Promise program is you have to have a lower income to be eligible for it, and I believe a family of 4, if your family's income is below $25,000 a year, you could be eligible for Promise. If you're eligible for Promise and you get into U of I, it's free everything. It's free tuition, housing, room and board. I think they have a book stipend. You'd want to check the Promise webpage to double check that. Southern at Carbondale has their version of commitment, so that the cutoff level for families' income is around 63,000 for that one. And Southern at Edwardsville has the same thing. A family's income cutoff is around $63,000. And then just a quick heads up, there are universities throughout the country, about 70, that are typically very harder to get into. But if you do get into them and you have economic need and you're demonstrating with going through their financial aid process that you're not able to pay the full cost, some schools end up being free or just a few grand a year. It really varies by your income and their rules. But one example is University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. We actually have had a couple students get into their Covenant Scholars program where it was free or almost free, everything but the amount that was calculated they were able to pay, which might only be 3 grand or 5 grand a year. If you want to go for a school that has a no loan policy, there's a whole other way of approaching that. And I actually bring in a guest speaker to talk about that. So keep an eye out for that. Or if you don't want to wait, email me. I have recordings of the last time he spoke. And then last of content, before I put my information up there, just a quick overview of scholarships. You want to be looking at those first two, internal and external scholarships. So look first at the internal scholarships, which are getting scholarships from the school you are attending. So like if you're coming to Prairie State and you're taking out loans or you're having a hard time paying for classes or books, you should be looking at Prairie State's foundation for scholarships. If you're heading to UIC, as you're applying, you also want to be looking at their scholarships. They have tuition waivers you could be applying for if you have a 3.25 or higher and you're transferring in a full associate's degree or at least 45 credits. You could be competing for getting your first semester of tuition for free. The next step is external scholarships or foundations or other groups, and those are scholarships that you could be applying to from looking down here in FastWeb or scholarships. Scholly or Unigo, our scholarship search engine, where you could be finding these scholarships. And these are scholarships that you get that you could be taking wherever you go. I mean, if you could be applying to those scholarships while you're attending Prairie State if you have an unmet need. And then a quick heads up that merit scholarships, so you'll see they usually have merit-based scholarships or need-based scholarships. Merit scholarships are based on your GPA. Need-based scholarships are based on your family's income. Universities will have automatic scholarships versus scholarships that you have to apply for. And some schools, many schools have both. GSU is an example. If you have a 3.5 or higher and you earn your associate's degree before you transfer, and you meet a few other qualifications that most students who attend Prairie State meet, you may automatically be considered for a $6,000 scholarship called the Aim High Scholarship. And if you get that, you get it and continue to meet their requirements. You get it every year. It's almost half the tuition. Um, Application scholarships, GSU has scholarships. If you're going to be on their forensics team, you could be applying for a scholarship. Or if they've got creative arts scholarship, if you're going into a painting field or something like that, you could be applying for scholarships to add on to that. There's big scholarships out there like the Jack Kent Cooke Foundation. Their scholarship application for next fall just opened on Friday. The application, this one's due in January. And in fact, the bigger scholarships, a lot of their deadlines tend to be in December or January. So now is the time to be looking if you want to be using them next fall. Jack Kent Cooke it's the biggest one. We had a Prairie State graduate get it last year, and we had 2 Prairie State graduates get it in 2013. We've had multiple students. Jack Kent Cooke's foundation listed them as semifinalists, so they didn't get the money, but that designation helped pave the way for other accomplishments, getting into schools that helped them pay for school. This scholarship, Jack Kent Cooke, is worth up to $55,000 a year for up to 3 years. You have to be a sophomore when you're applying, with the goal of attending the next fall at a university for the very first time. So you can't attend a university before. Your family's income needs to be below $95,000 a year, and you need to have at least a 3.5 GPA. If that might be you, or that might be you next year, I hope you look into applying for that and talk to me if you have questions. One last note, I'm actually going to be taking Scholly off in future. I forgot. I'm upset that I missed that today. Scholly they've started charging, and I don't recommend using paid services when there's plenty of free stuff out there. So there is a trial where you can use it for free, but just a heads up there. And last but not least, here's how to contact me. Email me. I would love to meet with each of you and talk about your goals and share more specific guidance, recommendations, suggestions for you. So email me and we can set up an in-person or virtual visit. You can let me know which one you prefer.